Welcome to the podcast series Talking Success, connecting the global FinTech community. I'm Stacey Jafta, and today I'll be chatting with Patrick Winterhoff, Chief Operating Officer at CG24 Group. CG24 is an online marketplace for financing, offering borrowers the opportunity to take out personal, real estate, and business loans. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hi, Stacey. I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing?
Good. How's your week been?
Excellent. Just came back from a holiday, so got back with lots of energy to get going again.
Nice. Where did you go?
Spent some time in Italy at the beach, soaking up some sun.
Beautiful. Love it. Well, Patrick, let's just dive right in. I want to hear more about your career journey and then essentially what led you to become Chief Operating Officer at CG24 Group.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
Happy to have you.
So my career journey, if you look at it on the CV, which has been a challenge in the past as well, might seem a bit haphazard.
Yeah.
So I started off basically deciding at university to study economics or biology. Decided on biology finally, and realized relatively quickly that while I'm very interested in natural sciences and I guess how the world functions, biology wasn't really the right thing for me. So kind of took a tack more towards business management. And thought I'd go into the life sciences area on the business side, pharma, etc. Try that out a couple of years in Singapore, doing business conferences, and actually being involved in sales very strongly, telephone sales, etc. To be honest, a horrible first job, but a very steep learning curve, and got a lot out of it in the end. I didn't enjoy it at the time, but looking back, I'm very happy I did it. It helped me, I guess, clarify a few things that I wanted to do. I realized that the life sciences area is interesting, but relatively slow paced. You know how long it takes to develop a drug, etc. Wasn't really what I was interested in. I kind of needed a bit more action. Had some involvement with the mining investment space while I was doing these business conferences, and that was super exciting. You had these wannabe big shot mining operators who came on stage to pitch their deals, etc. A little bit how you could see the fintech space at the moment now. And I realized, this is kind of exciting. I like the vibe of it. I want to go down that route, but still like the sustainability aspect that I had kind of caught on with in biology, and eventually then decided to go back to university and do some study physical geography to try and get on the route to push, or what I had identified as my actual key interest is to push sustainable agriculture and how to finance that with private money. Essentially, you have a lot of international organizations, World Bank, etc., governments that finance these kind of things, and so my passion is really going in that direction, finding ways to make the private market work in sustainable agriculture. And then after the studies, through a few different positions with the German Development Bank, then an impact investment fund in Germany, I actually ended up in the fintech space with CG24 Group as a product manager, as I saw it as an opportunity to really build towards that big goal I have later on in life, and been here for close to 4 years now, and not regretted it one bit. I've learned a huge amount of things while being with CG24, and awesome. Still have quite a lot of plans ahead as well.
Thanks. Can you tell me more about your experience at your current position and at the current company?
So I started off as a product manager, and really kind of got at the stage the company was at the time. It was still relatively small. We were around, 15 people. A lot of the products, etc., were still, not automated. A lot of things were still done by hand, in Excel sheets, etc. Trying to kind of give the impression of a fast-moving fintech, when I think the reality is a lot of companies still do a lot of stuff manually in the background in the initial stages. So I learned a lot there in terms of how the individual products need to work. What are our challenges in the various aspects of the business. A lot of things weren't working. And then we had a few changes structurally within the company on senior management level about a year after I first joined. So I became chief of staff.
Wow.
Right hand of the CEO and founder. He decided to take over, I guess, the executive leadership of the business again at that time. And so I really grew into, I guess, being the right hand of the CEO at the time, and continuously took over a lot of tasks that I actually have now as COO. So kind of grew into the role over about 2 years then, and then officially took over COO at the beginning of this year.
How involved in the acquisition were you in at the time?
So that was a big step, actually. 2020. This was shortly after I became chief of staff, so I was very closely involved in the due diligence process and the discussions we had at the time with Advanon, the company we acquired at the end of the day. And it was a huge learning experience for me. I hadn't, you read about these things in case studies, etc. But then actually being involved in it in the initial stages, negotiations, discussions, etc., was super interesting. Challenge as well, because a very steep learning curve. Again, a lot of things I actually hadn't dealt with before. And then you get to the point where the acquisition is, or the merger basically is signed as a done deal, and then you actually get to work, because the process is huge, and as is well known, doing a merger or an acquisition or any kind of integration is a huge challenge, and I knew that already. But again, once you experience it yourself, it's quite a different deal, actually.
From my understanding, it was a competitor that was acquired. Is that correct?
That's correct. So
okay, how do you analyze if that's the right competitor to merge with?
So I think it really depends on the situation that the company is in. What you really, I guess, one really needs to realize is the huge investment that it is to acquire a company, or to merge, or whatever the structure is you eventually end up with. And it's a challenge on various levels, because you have different cultures coming together. You have, I guess, technical systems that need to be integrated. You have different business and products. So for us, it was so I guess you really need to understand what you want out of it. What's the goal of acquiring another company? Is it a strategic acquisition? Do you want to go into a new market? And then that company will help you, I guess, achieve instant market share, essentially.
Yeah.
Or do you like some technical aspect that they have in their business that you want to integrate? And really, for us, it was more a matter of CG24 at the time was more the financial service provider, if you would say so. It wasn't really the typical FinTech. So on the technology side, we certainly had some catching up to do. Whereas Advanon was the typical FinTech. You get startup, nice tech, essentially. But on the flip side, for them, the financial service business that they had set up wasn't functioning at the level that it should be. So essentially, it was bringing those two businesses together and trying to make the strengths work on both sides, and eliminating the weaknesses.
Scott, could you design a video game?
I could make you a hypothetical one. If I took some random genres, mechanics, maybe blended them together, and created a new hypothetical game.
Now that would make a great podcast.
Undoubtedly.
So what would you make? Something original and exciting? A Dark Souls city builder? A co-op roguelike?
Everything. All of that. We could use the Nemesis system and put it in a first-person shooter. And we could have a loot system with survival mechanics and motion controls. And maybe you could, I don't know, save a kingdom from some out-of-control toasters. What about party?
Catch the Gaming Blender on all your favourite podcast platforms.
In my previous company, we went through a merger, and the way they delivered the news to the employees was, listen, not much is going to change within culture, that the business they were acquiring us at the time, the business that is acquiring us, they match our values, they match our company culture. How important do you think that cultural differences make when acquiring?
Well, actually, I'd be interested to hear from you whether that was actually the case or...
I think that in the short term, it's the case. And I think that they try to keep as much the same as possible so people don't panic and leave. And there's a lot, I think, of promises being made that maybe aren't always kept. I didn't stay at the company for that much longer, but that was for different reasons. I was in the US and then I had to move back to South Africa. So it wasn't because of the merger, but I think that a lot is said to keep the employees calm.
I think that's absolutely key. I think you have, and this is depends on the relationship in the merger, I guess, and which company is the stronger party at the end of the day, and who dictates how the business will be run in future. The people who come on board, of course, from the business that is being acquired. For them, it's a complete change. They've been working on this vision, I guess. If they're committed employees, they'll probably be disappointed, or they'll really have a challenge to accept a different way of looking at things. And it's important to try and make that process as easy as possible for them. And we certainly had our challenges there. The communication was similar, I guess. Not that there wouldn't be any changes. It was clear that there would be changes, but that we would really want to bring the strengths of both businesses together and work together as a team to really make both of them work well together.
Is there anything you would have done differently whether that's how you handled the acquisition, decisions being made?
Well, I think one thing you really need to look at is who gets what role in the new business. I think the specifically the role of the founder, for example, of the company that's being acquired is a challenge. You've invested so much of your lifeblood into the company and the vision, etc. And it's a success to sell the business, of course, but I think I have a sense that the motivation, it's very difficult to keep the motivation after the business is engulfed in a different mindset, possibly, or a different vision of how the future is supposed to be. And I think that's really a critical question, is that one should probably have and deal with a bit more closely with the key personnel on both sides. Probably is with a changed situation, is this still what they're looking for? And if not, then is there a way of making that work better, essentially, and ensuring then also that the roles they're fulfilling are, that they're really able to execute on them and not.
There's the saying that you never quit the business or your job, you quit your manager. Is there a way that you can mitigate that when acquiring a business? Because let's say the CEO usually leaves or stays on for a short amount of time and just at a point is no longer as involved, and maybe that was the person you were looking up to, or you really felt that was a massive passion of yours, is working with this person. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, this is a big challenge. Actually, in our case, so the CEO of Adbanon, the founder and CEO of Adbanon, left probably about a year after the merger.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
And he had some staff that was with Adbanon, and they followed him on, actually, or quite a few of them followed on. Which I think this is always the point. It's not necessarily harmful. These guys were great, of course. The work that they did, they were really talented. But at the same time, it's a question of motivation. You can have the most talented person on board, if they're not really committed to the business, then they're just not going to perform the way they need to. So at the end of the day, if you have somebody who leaves on to new pastures, my approach, or my way of thinking is don't stop them. There's a German saying, which I'm just going to translate really badly right now, but it's you shouldn't stop travelers, or you shouldn't stop people traveling.
I love that.
And for me, that really applies, because if somebody has decided to leave, or they're not, full committed anymore, then don't lay any stones in their way to stop them from leaving.
I love that.
Try to, of course, convince them to stay, but they really need to be convinced. And
and
it's probably then cheaper in the long run, or for the company, for the business, to find a new hire, to get somebody new in who's really convinced of the idea and really motivated to join.
You also went through a funding round with CG24 Group. On the podcast, we cover all the ways you should do a funding round, but not much about what not to do. What's your opinion on what not to do when going through a raise?
So actually, we're currently in discussions for a funding round at the moment. Of course, if you look at the markets at the moment, it's probably not the ideal time. We started a little bit too late, but nevertheless, I think I'm speaking mainly from this perspective of currently trying to raise now. What we found, or CG24, as I mentioned before, was not the typical fintech business. So we didn't really start with the usual stages: pre-seed, seed, A round, etc. Building up the relationship with the VC investors early on. This was kind of all lacking. So basically, from the network of the founders at the time, the business brought on board a lot of angel investors, quite a few high net worth individuals, which was good at the time. And the business kind of worked on a bootstrap basis for a long time. But with a new vision last year, when we decided to pivot a little bit and kind of really change the tack in terms of how we want to approach strong growth, we realized that specifically on the technical side, we really need a lot more firepower, a lot more funding to finance the business. And decided then, of course, just to say, okay, let's go down the route. Let's speak to VCs. And what I really realized is you need to establish those relationships early on, and it's an ongoing process. Discussions. You need to getting the foot in the door with a VC is, especially when you're not at the early stage anymore, is much more challenging. If you don't have an established, connection already. And I think if you take the typical VC ladder, then it's much easier because probably you'll start with the angel investor network, and they can help introduce you to early stage VCs. And then it's a kind of if the business performs well, it's a natural process. Whereas if you start with bootstrapping and you don't really cultivate those relationships, it becomes very challenging later on to quickly execute on the fundraising process.
I understand you're currently in the trenches, so this might be a difficult one to answer. But you mentioned that this is a difficult time to raise. Is there anything that you're currently learning about what the market is looking like and just having to change your approach to raising?
Well, actually, I think on one side it's a difficult time to raise simply because the hype is kind of a little bit out of the market. So the VCs and investors are not just throwing the money out there as they did last year. At the same time, I think that's a good thing because this is really the time that you can really shine as a business that's functional. We're close to basically break even on our basic business model as we're market leader in Switzerland in the marketplace lending space. So we're doing very well and can have very good conversations with investors. I mean, the funding hasn't dried up completely. It's still there. There's still money around for good businesses. So it's really more about making sure that the fundamentals are right in the business. And I guess if you are a business that was purely going for growth and maybe wasn't even close to profitability or didn't really have a clear roadmap to that profitability, then it'll probably be quite a battle.
Talking about growth, moving from a startup to a scale-up has many challenges, and often there are a ton of growing pains, a lot of trial and error. How do you scale or grow a business while you're teething?
I think for me, that's really the key point is do good hiring. So what I've seen personally, I guess in my own career, but also we've had a few occasional bad hires at CG24 as well in the past. I would really put that down to our hiring process not being really critical enough. So it was at times, I think it was a little bit more, again, haphazard. You kind of have your own biases. You think, okay, this person seems similar to me, so let's hire this person, and you don't really put them through the rigmarole of doing a case study, maybe, etc.
Okay.
I think the process of really challenging people in the hiring process is time intensive. You need to also involve various people from maybe various teams. So actually, it's quite costly. but investing that time, on a balanced level to really make sure that the hire is the right fit, is motivated, has the right skill set, makes such a big difference. Because if you get somebody in who kind of, you don't need to hold their hand for the first few months, but they can start working straight away, take over responsibility. They have the right motivation to do the right things. It's such a big benefit for the business in the end, because you can focus on other things, and the person can do things right that maybe, I don't know, you're not experienced enough, or you don't have the right experience to do properly. So that's really key. But then you also need to look at the stage the company is at. If you're really early stage, you probably won't be able to hire the most experienced people. Unless you have a lucky punch. Maybe there might be a person who's fed up with their corporate job, and really wants to take on a new challenges, willing to take a big pay cut, and then go for it. Get that person on board, and make sure that they're incentivized as well within the business to perform well. So I think those, for me, those are really the key points to avoid unnecessary growing pains.
Okay, very interesting. It's a candidate-driven market. We see that roles almost have switched, where it's candidates interviewing hiring managers, seeing if they want to join this business, candidates having 2 to 3 different offers. How do you find that balance then of putting them through a rigorous process, case studies, but you need to get their buy-in? How do you find that perfect balance of them still being excited about this opportunity, but not having the process be too long where they drop out or accept a different offer?
Interesting question. This is something, of course, we look at very frequently. I think at the end of the day, as you mentioned, we realized that relatively early on. So Advanon, the company we acquired, they had a pretty good hiring process, which we liked. And basically, this is one of the benefits, I guess, of the merger, is that we've taken over that hiring process almost fully. But I think there are various stages. At the initial stage, of course, if you have a good image as an employer, as a fintech company, that creates the first interest, right? That you actually get the application from the candidates that you want. And following that, then actually, I think the rigorous process, I mean, it's not that rigorous. We typically have 3 stages. We have a first interview, then a case study, and then a follow-up interview with the CEO or founder, essentially, to make sure that the fit is right from their perspective as well. But I find the case study is an excellent way to actually engage with the candidate much more closely, because of course, if you take some random case study that has nothing to do with the real business, it's kind of tedious. But what we like to do is actually take real issues that we have in the business currently right now, take that as a point of discussion, then and see, okay, how do they actually look at this problem? There's no solution to it, really. It's more a matter of, okay, how do they actually go at it? And then have a discussion with the team later on. And I find the feedback we've always had has been excellent. They found it very interesting, and it gives them a feel for the business, and I guess the job that they will be doing as well. And that helps the discussion.
At Talent in the Cloud, we see job descriptions daily with different requirements, some businesses wanting certain degrees, others focusing more on experience. What type of experience or education do you see as important in the fintech sector?
So I guess this is my personal opinion. I think some people might differ on that. And I refer back to the point earlier. I think it depends on what stage your company is at. If you're early stage, I think I would much rather prefer an all-rounder, somebody who's done a lot of different things, who can bring a lot of different skill sets into the business, and I guess different perspectives, so that you can challenge the way things are done typically. But specifically somebody who's willing to learn. The person really has to be curious, keen to go out there and try out new things, and also get in the trenches and dig, so actually get their hands dirty, and not be the type of person to want to delegate all the time, etc. But then you get to a later stage in the business, and then of course you really need specific expertise when you need to professionalize. We're in the fintech space, so financial services is extremely regulated. To convince an institutional investor, for example, you need to make sure that you're speaking their language. And you really can only do that if you have somebody who's spoken the language before in a larger company. So then the best hires at that stage, I find, are people who've been in the corporate world and who've decided, now this is not what I want to do in future. I want to try out the startup route, some excitement, maybe also some potential big compensation if there's an exit at some stage. So that's what I typically look for then.
I am very, very surprised by your answer. So Talent in the Cloud, we're an executive search firm focusing on fintech talent. So we speak to hiring managers every day, giving us exactly what they're looking for. And it's so rare that people look for corporate experience, just because they find it's a struggle for them to adapt to being agile. Just they really struggle with how things are done and how things are run. And here's an idea, plan it out, let's go launch. Is that not the case for you, at least?
It absolutely is. But
okay.
but maybe it's also a matter of, I guess, how long that corporate experience is.
Okay.
And I guess at what point in time does a person become disillusioned with the corporate experience? I think there is certainly a struggle, and I find it also in the hiring processes when you have interviews. You tend to realize in the interview process already, in the case study, when they start thinking about the problem, okay, you can clearly see that they have a kind of siloed thinking when approaching an issue. But I'm a big fan of if the candidate is good, has the right skill set, and they're willing to, and they want to learn, and they want to, I guess, change a little bit, then I'm a big fan of giving them a chance and seeing how that works out. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. But I think also maybe on the flip side, I would be hesitant, or I would be interested in somebody who came from the fintech space with a lot of experience in the fintech space. But at the same time, I see the danger, and you see it in the VC space specifically. It's this kind of groupthink. This is the way the world works in fintech space, and I don't think that's necessarily helpful, because you kind of end up becoming your own corporate identity, just like as if you were at a bank. And,
got you. So
and that's
kind of like a fresh perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's difficult to be innovative if you're doing what all the other fintechs are doing at the end of the day.
Okay.
So I guess there's no cookie cutter answer that you can really use, but it's always a case by case situation.
Fantastic. Patrick, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was lovely having you on.
Absolutely. Likewise. Thanks a lot, and all the best.
Thanks. Where's the best place for listeners to reach you?
LinkedIn, easiest. I always check the messages, don't always respond as I get a lot of them, but if it's interesting, then I certainly will.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Talking Success, Connecting the Global FinTech Community. Feel free to follow us on LinkedIn at Talent in the Cloud. And if you're interested in exec talent, expanding your team, or you yourself are looking for a new, exciting change in your career, check out our website, talentinthecloud.io.